A lot of people that don't do combat sports, they don't understand what's sparring, like that thrill that it gives you. I think it's so much more than any team sport because there's something that gets triggered inside of us that's a combination of fear, violence, fitness, respect, humility, that is very hard to find anywhere else.
Learning to program myself, improve, believe in myself, like I was testing myself every day training, but just to believe in myself and what it did to my actual performances, my technique, your style and how I wanted to fight. It was just like programming it all in. It was just unbelievable.
What was fighting under Sang Morakot like?
It was a lot harder for us to adapt to that, you know, especially with the humidity and stuff like that. Like you were constantly getting sick, getting sores, everything would get infected because your immune system was so suppressed, so run down, you know, but you still did it. Like I wanted to do everything that I did because I didn't want to be considered, you know, a lazy Westerner or something like that.
As a fighter, you got to fucking prove yourself. Not only to yourselves, like you have to set that standard to yourself, but every day you got to prove yourself to your coaches, to your teammates, to the athletes, to the opponent. So many fighters that quit so early after every setback. Whereas the truth of the matter is those setbacks is what builds you. Hey guys, welcome to the Fighters Mindset Podcast. Today I'm very excited to introduce our guest. When we think about Australian Muay Thai legacy, when we think about lineage, when we think about the people who built the foundations of Muay Thai within Australia, there's a handful of people we consider. Today we're blessed to have one of those guests. He was one of the first people that was introduced and welcomed into the prestigious Sang Morakot gym as a Westerner during a time when people, the Westerners, weren't not only rare, but they were actually considered outsiders. He's fought at Lumpini Stadium, traveled the world and fought at an elite level. During his extensive decade of fighting, once that came to an end, he passed on the torch and his passion to now building one of the largest Muay Thai gyms in WA and has spent the past 2 decades building champions. And not only state and national champions. What makes our guest very unique is that he's built back-to-back legitimate WMC and WBC World Champions, which in itself is such a powerful feat. However, his impact on the sport and his fighters isn't only on titles. He's continued to embody his gym's mantra that Muay Thai is life and created, amongst myself, many other people who have now continued their legacy in sport. Guys, I'm excited to introduce someone who I consider a good friend, a mentor, a coach, a man that I've said for a long time has given me the sport of Muay Thai. Darren Riddler Reece, welcome aboard, mate.
Thanks, mate. What an intro. Wow.
Well deserved, I think.
I'm blushing.
I think when we think about Australian Muay Thai, when we go back now 30 years in this sport, there is so much happened and so much has been built, but it's truly been as a thanks to the pioneer work that you guys have done. But as we spoke earlier, I think there is such an extensive journey you've had, so we'll split it up into different components. And first of all, one of the things obviously that always intrigues me, especially with mindset and psychology, is someone's youth. What shaped them to lead them towards the sport of Muay Thai? Because I always teach that most of us start Muay Thai because we're either chasing something or running away from something. What was your childhood? What was your journey? And what led you towards ultimately Muay Thai?
Definitely the competition. But firstly, like I've done sport my whole life. I started in swimming and then obviously competitive swimming from a very young age, like primary school, 6 years old, swimming lessons. And by high school, I was twice a day swim training. I started in soccer. I've got little trophies from when I was like 8 or 9, and then into Aussie rules football. Sport mad. Did all the sports I could in school while doing competitive swimming. And being serious about soccer, and then transitioning over to Aussie rules football as well.
Oh wow! I never knew you were Aussie rules. I thought I knew mostly about you, but that's a new little nugget.
That's a new one.
So always just a thrill of competition.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, always learning to push yourself, learning to build resilience and grit and determination and learning to push yourself in training, Later in my swimming career, sort of, I was around 16 years old. I was starting to get a lot of shoulder injuries, overuse injuries. And I think I was just burnt out from the years of chasing the black line on the pool. So I started running and bike riding, got into triathlons, which again is just that grit and determination levels, and just learning to push yourself, taking on a new sport, huge bike rides. I remember doing lots of running, and because my swimming was so good, I did very little swimming.
Yeah. What age was
triathlon? This was about 16, 17, I started getting into triathlons.
Yeah.
So, and I did that for a couple of years, say 2 years, with a lot of bike riding and running, which again brought that new level of mental toughness and conditioning, just from the pure volume of training that you had to do to get anywhere in triathlon.
Do you remember back then, would things like mindset, and you're talking a lot about building the resilience and the toughness and the grit, for the junior athletes out there, did you understand that back then, or was it just for the passion of competition?
No, it was just for the competition.
You just felt
competitive,
it.
Yep.
Awesome. And then from there, how do we transition? Because I believe earlier on you started with Zendo Kai, wasn't it?
Yeah. So what happened? This is kind of a little bit of a funny story. In the space of only a few months, I had a couple of accidents on my bike, like got cleaned up by cars, and these kinds of things happen where either the bike or you take the brunt of the impact. So there was one time I got cleaned up by a hit and run driver, and it was on a public holiday on a long training ride, and someone pulled in front of it. We're probably a little bit obnoxious, maybe riding a little bit wide.
You were one of those cyclists we hate?
Wide. No, I wasn't, but we were quite a big group, and this car came around us, obviously got frustrated with being behind us in the lane, came around us, cut us off, jammed its brakes on. I was at the front and went into the back of the car, up onto the back of the car, and then off onto the inside lane. Luckily, there was no one coming through.
Wow.
So, yeah, another time very close to it, I got T-boned on Beaufort Street, a car from a side street. I was riding along, pulled out, then saw me, stopped. I went in to the wheel arch and I cleared over the bonnet. And it's funny how things slow down and go in slow motion. I remember going over it and going, oh, fuck, and then shoulder rolling.
Yeah. It's crazy. I think your body does that. Like, I don't know the science. This isn't one of the educated parts, but I think you actually slow down so you can be able to pick up what to do and hopefully be able to react in that moment a little bit better. Because there's got to be a reason why during these insane collisions, everything slows down. So you reckon that guy did it intentionally as well?
No, it was just carelessness.
Yeah. Okay.
Side street, busy Beaufort Street. Was there, obviously looked through me and then pulled out and then saw me and jammed on the brakes in panic. And I was sailing along and went straight into it. So, and the third and final thing, which led my parents to begging me to do something else a little bit safer. was
little did they know.
Yeah. Was an ex-training partner, someone that I used to meet up with and ride with. I was meant to meet up with him and ride this day, but I got a flat tyre on the way there to meet him. And so obviously I lost time changing the tyre and all that kind of thing, got to our meet-up point late and he'd already left. And that day he got cleaned up where we were riding by a semi-trailer, by a truck. So it very well could have been me.
Oh my God.
So.
And what, survived or not?
No.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, took him out.
It's funny the way life sometimes works out. Like there's moments where, and not to get too deep on this path, but there's moments where you're like, if this had happened, 1 second, something, the smallest things, like whether you believe in the universe, whether it's just pure sheer luck, you having a flat tire that day, potentially.
And the pain in the ass of having to change it on the side of the road.
Would have completely saved your life.
Yep.
And then we go to the safer option of a permanent fighting career.
Yeah, well, it never started that way. You know, as a teenager, you know, while I was committed to these other sports, swimming and then triathlon, and And sort of about that time, finishing high school, you get away from doing football and stuff unless you're at that next level of seriousness with it. Always interested in martial arts and, Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, or watching those kinds of movies.
Kickboxer.
And then obviously Jean-Claude Van Damme. So
I don't think there's anyone in our generation that wasn't inspired by fighting Bolo Ying.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a favourite movie. Always interested in the martial arts. So looked around at a few places because, my mum in particular begged me to find something safer. She was sick of worrying about whether I was going to come back from a training ride and stuff especially after all these close calls and then that very close call. So my dad took me around to a few places as well. I remember going to Jandajong and having a look and a few other places. And then I saw Sean Allen advertising in the local newspaper. And he was just in a hall, just starting off at that time. It was very early in the day for him.
Yep.
Obviously went on to build a very massive, successful business.
Which then continued on with his guys as well. Funnily enough, that was my introduction, Sean Allen's as well.
Yep. And so just started training. Back in those days, Sean was competing. He was a very early competitor in Muay Thai rules and even kickboxing. Yep. So a lot of our training from very early on was, striking. So although starting in Zendokai is the best of everything in progression. Yep. So whatever works. We used to do some street stuff. It was a little bit too early for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in the Western world at that point. So it was more kind of like just sort of like wrestling and some takedowns and stuff like that, not much ground stuff. We used to do a lot of street and a lot of pad work. Yeah. And he would join in with some of the training and we'd do big circuit classes and stuff like that. And even sparring. I remember sparring very early on in my
and sparring hard as well.
Yeah. Back
like a lot of people don't realize, because obviously nowadays when we look at karate and a lot of martial arts, unfortunately it's been watered down. But back in the days, Zendokai, karate, they were hardcore. Like you didn't play karate the way you do now.
Yeah.
So even the kickboxing days and stuff like that, when you walked into the gym, it wasn't the idea of the gym being the business. It was the idea of you either sink or you swim. So I could imagine that would build, again, this resilience and toughness from an early stage.
Yeah. And plus there was, no one was suing anyone or there was no waivers or anything like that, So as long as you had a mouth guard, you could spar, and it was, 12-ounce gloves, thin foam shin pads, which left you with more bruising than no shin pads, I reckon.
Yes. Did you have mats on the floor, or was it like...
Nah, mats were not even close to being invented. Not even close to being invented.
This sounds like Fight Club 101. That would have given you a spark quite immediately.
Definitely. Obviously Sean Allen was the Bob Jones Corporation, which nearly everyone who started in training martial arts and Muay Thai literally started with BJC. Yeah,
BJC back in the day was the original of what we would consider that platform to be built. And even Zendokai as well. Like back in the day, the guys in that space were strong, hard. Nowadays, obviously, the business is taking over. It does a lot of benefits for the normal people. But I could imagine back then, and it's interesting because when a lot of people that don't do combat sports, they don't understand what sparring, like that thrill that it gives you. I think it's so much more than any team sport or any, ball sport, because there's something that gets triggered inside of us that's a combination of fear, violence, fitness, respect, humility, that is very hard to find anywhere else.
Yeah.
Where did that take you in the Zendokai journey?
That took me, obviously, the competitiveness of having been in sport for so long, and sparring like that, getting hit like that, kicked like that. There's a very different culture of sparring these days. It's much more playful and
protective,
and skillful. I guess after sparring like that and encountering those kinds of confrontations as a young man, your competitive nature takes over, and then the next step after training for any amount of time is you want to start testing yourself. So the BJC used to run some touch contact tournaments that were touch contact. But
anything but touch. Yeah, the touch isn't defined. It's a spectrum of touch. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, but they were like elimination tournaments on the day. So they were great experiences, great growth.
Yeah.
And I did very well in those. So then it takes you to that next level. Okay, what's the next test? I've done this. I've experienced this. I've done well. And what's next? And the next thing was, just starting to fight.
So did you start to fight under BJC, or did you go into Muay Thai?
Yeah.
Or is it still BJC?
So I had my first fight under Sean Allen. Though training fighters wasn't really his goal, he wanted to accommodate me at least getting started. Mm-hmm. And then after I had that first fight, although I lost it, it was for a state title fight.
Your first fight?
I jumped in for a teammate. So a teammate was meant to be fighting for the WKA state title, and he had to pull out with an injury. And I went, I'll do it.
What, you would have been 18, 19 at this stage?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I jumped in. Opponent was the state champion, 6 or 7 fights, I think. And, copped a bit of a hammering, but learnt a lot from it, and obviously it was a good enough experience to want to go again. And I spoke to Sean. I'd like to continue fighting, and so he recommended me to a gym that was focused on training fighters.
Which was?
That was Mark Jones down in Fremantle, O'Connor.
Oh, wow.
So that was he was one of the original fight trainees, so a hard man from back in those days.
Yeah, back in those days, you're right. There was no such thing as waiver forms.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, he had 2 sons, Simon Jones and Vance Jones, which was who I fought.
Oh, wow.
So I went and joined them. So, yeah.
Can't beat them, join them.
So I had a couple of fights there. And then I wasn't overly happy with the way it was going, so I decided to make a change. I wanted to take on the Thai way, and started going to Thailand.
You went straight from Mark Jones to Thailand, or?
No, I actually I spent some time in Melbourne as well. I spent about 18 months in Melbourne.
Yeah, which if I recall was the kickboxing that was.
Yeah, that was.
Tickled your fancy either?
That was back then. Sort of Melbourne and Queensland were the big states for anything like fight sports.
Yep.
They made up the majority of the international kickboxer magazines, which was like our Bible.
I remember those days.
Yeah, we lived to read from front cover to back cover as soon as you got it, and it was all Queensland and Melbourne. Victoria in the magazines, so that naturally became the place that I wanted to go to. Was torn between the two, but then I met Paul Demicoli, who is now in Queensland, funnily enough, the last 20 years, but is from Melbourne. And he encouraged me to go to Melbourne, went to Ultimate, trained under Johnny Sheeder, and spent a year and a half there, I think. So had a number of fights over there, mixed rules. Sometimes I got to fight Muay Thai. Sometimes I fought kickboxing. I had a couple of amateur boxing fights while I was there. But over time, I realised it wasn't really the way that I wanted to go.
So from Melbourne to Thailand, now up until this stage, you've built naturally such a strong mindset, resilience, fitness capacity. You always had that competitive nature. But I always remember the stories you would tell me about Thailand. Like there was training, there was fighting, and then you went to Thailand, and that was just a whole different world. Talk me through that journey as one of the Westerners that went to Thailand long before it was fashionable to go to Thailand.
Well, my first actual Thailand experience was on Stefan Fox's, who's one of the heads of WMC, one of the powerhouses in World Muay Thai. He was when he used to live in far north Queensland, and he used to do an annual event. And I went along to one of his first Thailand tours. So that was my first experience.
Oh,
so
wow.
that went for nearly 1 month. And there was a whole bunch of guys from around Australia, different states that you joined the tour. And then we went to Thailand. We went to Koh Samui. So this is back in the very, very early days. So Koh Samui wasn't a training place. The WMC headquarters was just like a literal hut. Like it was like a bamboo hut.
That's awesome.
With one ring that had a concrete pad to it. And then obviously a little bit of padding, and then the ring, it was...
What would this be, like 1990, 90?
This was 1993.
Yeah, wow. So we're talking about 30 years ago. And like, onto that note of the movie Kickboxer, like when you see it like that, that's what it was.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then from there?
And then from there, it would have been, obviously that ignited my fire for wanting to get to Thailand. Saved up as much money as I could. And then probably the following year was my first trip to main Thailand. And I went down to Pattaya and the world famous at that point, Sityodtong Gym. So that was the first gym. The Bob Jones Corporation were going there. There was a number of Dutch and European fighters that were going there, and it was accepted for you to go there and be able to train.
Yeah.
It was really the first place to start taking in foreigners. And so that was where I did my first 3 months. So that was some mixed experiences, but all experiences that added to my where I'm at now. Like, a funny story, my first fight, wasn't trained up for it. We'd only been there myself. Went with my best mate Timor back then, who we started training together, and he didn't train that day because he was feeling tired. Us getting used to the twice a day and learning to clinch and this Thai style pad work and stuff like that. I went to training, was sitting down, afternoon training to begin, just putting my shoes on, and one of the trainers comes up to me and he goes in, very broken English, why are you putting your shoes on? You fight tonight. I'm like, huh? What do you fight tonight? Like, this is in Thailand, so instantly you start shitting yourself. I think I'd had, how many fights had I had? I think I'd had 3 fights at this point. And yeah, you fight tonight. You go home, you come back, massage, we go fight. Okay. So I go home, get my stuff, relax for a little bit, try to relax
As you're shitting
Come
yourself.
back to the camp, you get a massage, do a little bit of shadow boxing, and then got put in the back of a ute with about 20 other Thai people, and I don't know, sit for a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours, I reckon, in the back of a ute, driving out to a temple fair that was going on, just markets and everything around, and not another single white person that I can remember.
You would have just stood out in that moment.
Yeah. And they'd come up and they'd be touching your arms to see what you feel, like lifting your shirt up, just touching your
You're like the specimen for the day.
squeezing your triceps and see if you train or not, stuff like that.
See, this is like to any fighters out there that get nervous on fight day as they're driving aircon to their local arena to fight on their local show. Understand there is so much more extreme circumstances.
So many fights I had in Thailand where you often didn't know who your opponent was. A lot of the fights early on didn't have weigh-ins and stuff like that.
Yeah. They still don't.
No, they still don't.
Like the Thai way is just sometimes insane.
Yeah, until you get to that high level, they're very blasé, and it's like, yep, not too bad. Yep, close enough. Yep.
Same.
Put you together.
And that's what I think, like, one of the most important things we teach fighters is, honestly, like, in your early part of your career, and for the guys watching this, if you've listened to Darren's story so far, everything good, bad, up, down, surprise, it all shapes you and build you. A lot of fighters in their first 5-10 fights, they put so much pressure on the outcome of that fight. When the truth of the matter is, it doesn't mean shit. Like, until you first start reaching, all right, I'm top 5, I'm in that state title region. And even then, after the state title, you're back at the bottom of the list. Then all these little things matter. Like, when you're 5 fights in, who cares about what your opponent fought like the fight before?
Yeah.
Who cares about what day you had? Like, all of these things, the worst experiences would have built up such resilience. So after Sichitong, where did that take you?
I did my time there. I had 3 months, 3 or 4 fights. Again, going back to that, the fear of the unknown, not having the build up. A number of those times was simply just turning up and having a fight. I had fights where there was like bars that used to have fights, and they'd ask someone to volunteer to fight you, and you'd have a fight like that. I remember one time getting asked if I wanted to fight, and so I rode back to my apartment on my scooter and got my mouth guard, and then came back, put on the steel ball guard, mouth guard, shorts on, and had a fight. Again, you don't know what you have got until you're in there and the fight starts.
Because I remember whenever I used to fight for you as well, like, Daz, what's the game plan? You're like, I'll tell you at the end of round 1. I was like, what? Like, what?
Yeah.
But now in hindsight, I know exactly what that means, because you don't know who you're facing. Even if you watched all the fights, you can kind of know, oh, he's a clincher. But what he comes out with his game plan, that fight?
Yeah,
that's crazy. For a lot of the guys right now that are going, because it's still, the funny thing is, after 30 years, fighting in Thailand hasn't really changed much. So when you go to Samui or Pattaya or Phuket, and you go to these westernized gym, and like, yeah, you fight next week against who? Well, we don't know. You figure it out then. Like, you don't know if you're fighting a taxi driver. You don't know if you're fighting one of the teens that's taking it seriously.
Yeah.
You just have to
You don't know if
you're not fighting a Westerner.
You don't know if you're fighting a Russian that's had 50 fights, but they're just saying he's had 5 fights.
Yeah, same.
Spin the wheel.
Same. Literally. And I think that's one of the most overwhelming yet calming experiences, because you just don't know what you're going in for. And I think you always got to come back and that internal focus on yourself, that you're doing the training, you're doing the work, you're pushing it in, and you'll fight whoever's in front of you. Because at the moment, all that matters is that you get to fight.
Yeah. Whereas now, the young fighters, they want to know their opponent's name straight away so they can check their Facebook profile or their Instagram and see what they're like and try and find fights of them and do their research.
And they come back and they start telling you, I should be working this for this fight. You're like, cool, dude, you're still in pads, but you tell me how to coach you. I had so many frustrating moments. They're like, look at this photo of him throwing a head kick. When it's one photo. And probably he's got that photo up there because it's the only head kick he's ever thrown.
Photo up there. Yeah.
Whereas, back then you wouldn't even have had any of this stuff. And you wouldn't even know what you're going in for. After Sichitong, you had an experience at Jockeys, was it?
Yeah. My mate Timor had decided that he had enough at Sichitong, because back then they were because it was one of the few places that was taking people in, it became a little bit over commercialized. Not so much in the style of training, but just simply you weren't cared for. The pad holders were just going through the motion, not really teaching asking you for gifts and for you to buy them gifts and all this kind of thing, and just sometimes not really doing the right thing. So decided Timor made a move, and he found home in Bangkok. It was a very famous gym called Jockey Gym. So where Danny Bill spent a lot of time there, that built his skills. A lot of very famous fighters come out of there, including Sanchai. Was originally from Jockey Gym. Incredible skill set. The gym used to do like a lot of sparring, a lot of play sparring and stuff like that. And all of their fighters were known for having such great skills. So I went there met up with Timor. Danny Bill was there, spent some time there, but it just wasn't for me. So it was one of the very few places, they only had two Westerners at that point, Danny Bill and Timor, and they just didn't take to me at all. I spent nearly 3 weeks there, I think, and didn't get pads one time.
Yeah.
So all my work was just running and sparring and getting thrown down in the clinch.
See, this is such an important lesson to learn, because every stage of your journey, there's been so many setbacks. And I've always said the difference between the victim and the survivor is the same origin story, but a different response. There's so many fighters that quit so early after every setback. Whereas the truth of the matter is those setbacks is what builds you. And I think that's what now leads us into the ultimate path for you in Muay Thai, which was Sang Morakot.
Yeah, Sang Morakot. Yeah, so at that point where I wasn't happy, I called Pon. I had a good friendship with Pon. And I called him and asked where to go, and he was good friends with a man called Jartui. Yeah, got in contact with Jartui, and I went there. So, and the rest is history with that. So I paid fees for the first month. I paid for a month of training, and trained really hard. The gym had a lot of champions during that time that I was there. It was Thailand Gym of the Year twice, I think in the space of about 4 years. Incredible number of champions and just high level, and the training was just absolutely phenomenal. It taught me what hard training was. It taught me how to deal with fatigue and pushing yourself and making yourself go training where you just simply think that you can't do it. And I remember going to afternoon training and my legs feeling so heavy, and just on the walk there, just going to myself, my God, how am I going to get through this training? And once you get going, some of those sessions turn into your best sessions, you know.
It's amazing. I remember you, and this is a quote I've lived my entire life since you've told me this past 20 years, is that sometimes you just have to accept that fatigue is part of life, and really working towards something you want requires an incredible amount of hard work. And one of the mindset hacks, which is so important, is our brain wants us to quit much quicker than what our body is capable of. And for the guys out there that struggle in the difficult moments and question whether or not they can get through something, what you explained is exactly what mindset training is. When your brain's telling you, I'm exhausted, I'm fucked, we can't move, take the day off, walk back home, make an excuse, and then you say, shut the fuck up, and we still go forward, then your body realizes that your mind's not in control of you, you're in control of your mind. And that's when you start breaking through those ceilings and barriers and truly learning what you're capable of. And I remember you always telling me the stories of Sang Morakot, of the hard training. What would a typical training session at Sang Morakot be like back then? Man,
it was the morning run. We used to have to run so early because we were in central Bangkok. So the traffic was just horrific, and it would be like way worse than it is now. It would be bumper to bumper. So Sang Morakot used to run Chitlada, which is the king's residence. So around there had like a nice water moat around it, and it had a big square lap. And you used to walk to there. I think we used to start at about 5:15, 5:30 to try and get most of our run done before the traffic. So again, you'd wake up going, oh my God, that's the alarm. I can't do it. But you're obviously making yourself do it. And then walking for 20 minutes before you got to the spot where the run would commence, and you'd run 8 kilometers if you didn't have a fight. That was your maintenance run. And if you did, it was 12, sometimes 14 kilometers, depending on what was going on with the camp. Like sometimes if a fighter would lose a fight, they would be not fit enough, so everyone had to run an extra lap, which meant sometimes it would be 12Ks, sometimes it would be 14Ks.
Brutal.
And then back to the camp. Nice relaxing walk. Try and get a little bit of nourishment on the way back to camp. Morning training, besides the run, morning training wasn't so bad. It would be like yeah, it was a 20-minute skip. And then it would generally just be 3 rounds of shadow, 3 rounds on pads, 3 rounds on the bag, and maybe some technique.
But these are 5-minute rounds, yeah?
Yeah, these are 5-minute rounds.
Yeah. So for the guys, this isn't 3 2s. This is still 5-minute rounds.
Yeah, and preparing you for the afternoon training. So afternoon training was just insane. It would be like 4 hours. So
Wow.
4 hours. So it would start at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, blistering heat. And Sang Morikot isn't the Sang Morikot that you see on social media, Instagram back then. So I've got photos I can show you, or you've actually probably seen. Sang Morikot was open roof, concrete floor, a square of carpet if you were lucky, and a ring that was like a death trap slipperiness that we used to clinch in. So training was often in the afternoon sun. 3 o'clock skip. Afternoon training was 30-minute skip, which was mind-numbing.
On concrete barefoot?
On concrete bare feet. No mats. Mats weren't even close to being invented or being afforded at that point.
Yeah, and if they were the Thai style way, wouldn't want it.
Yeah. Shadow boxing was 5-minute rounds. Again, fairly mind-numbing when you're doing it every day.
Yeah.
Every session. If you didn't have a fight, you would start the session with Len Chern, play sparring, no shin pads. Camp maybe had 2 or 3 pairs of shin pads for the trainers. And so majority of your Len Chern, your play sparring was no shin pads, no gloves, just your wraps on, or you might put your bag mitts on and just be playing around and like literally play like that for 45 minutes to an hour until it was your time that there was a bag free. And then you would go on to pads, or if you were at the top of the pecking order, you would start, if you had the bigger fights and you were the closest to the fight, you would start on pads.
Yep. And
then you would go bag, and then you would Len Chern, or would go the opposite way. So, couple of hours work there. Bag work was 5 5s. And maintenance work was 3 to 4 rounds on pads, but when you were in fight prep, it was 5 to 7 5-minute rounds.
And that could even
pads.
be potentially after 2-3 hours of skipping, shadow, and churn, bag, and then you might get those pad rounds.
Yeah.
So for the fighters out there sitting around for a few rounds waiting for your fucking coach to hold pads and complaining that you're not getting the princess treatment, man.
Yep. And then clinch. Yeah, clinch was about an hour, depending if the Thai coach that was keeping time kept on a
normal analog clock.
Sometimes an hour 15, hour 20 later.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry everyone, enough. But clinching was generally 45 minutes to an hour. And if you had a fight, it would be Shark Tank. So two or three of them clinching you.
So, it's interesting because one of the conversations I always have is you can't beat your demons with science. And what I mean by that is if a sports science guru is sat here, and even us, we agree that's overtraining. But the importance of the mental resilience and toughness that builds to push through that kind of training, like obviously there's no doubt your skill level would have improved so much. But your mindset, your toughness, your resilience, I think that Sang Morikot stint not only built your Thai style, but it built that mental fortress that I think you carried through your entire life. Because I even remember the stories you would tell me about the clinch pad rounds. And it was just a beasting, relentless the whole way through.
Yeah.
What was fighting under Sang Morikot like? Because I could have imagined you held a lot of honor with them and you had to prove yourself constantly.
Yeah, and that was very much my own expectation on myself as well. Like I wanted I wanted to get their respect. I wanted to do the training that they did, although I didn't have those years of conditioning and stuff like that to the Thai style training under my belt. It was a lot harder for us to adapt to that, you know, especially with the humidity and stuff like that. Like you were constantly getting sick, getting sores, everything would get infected. Because your immune system was so suppressed, so run down, you know, but you still did it. Like I wanted to do everything that I did because I didn't want to be considered, you know, a lazy Westerner or something like that. And like I mentioned before, I paid for my first month of training. I got tested with my first fight, at Rajadamnern. I fought a Channel 3 active TV fighter. And I won on points, and after that, I didn't pay for training anymore.
Wow.
They treated me as one of theirs.
That's huge back then.
Yeah.
See, again, a lot of fighters nowadays got to realize that they show up, and it's as if the coach in the gym is entitled to have them. Whereas as a fighter, you got to fucking prove yourself. Not only to yourselves, like you have to set that standard to yourself, but every day you got to prove yourself to your coaches, to your teammates, to the athletes, to the opponents. This concept of just being accepted is such a false fallacy to live on. I think the concept of always constantly trying to prove yourself is such a powerful motivator.
Yeah, powerful motivator. Yep.
Huge. And where did Sang Morakot Muay Thai fight days lead you into? Sounds like there's a lot there.
Yeah. There was a lot of time there, and you know, let's keep in mind this wasn't Phuket either. This wasn't going to a cafe or going for a shake or something like that. This was no English. This was me having to learn to speak fluent Thai to get by and still be treated like an idiot sometimes. Although the people at Sang Morakot were very good to me. I just meant around the general population, you know, taxi drivers and all those kinds of guys. You'd speak to them in fluent Thai and they still try to get the better of you, stuff like that. Yeah, very, very funny times. Some very dark, lonely times, although you're living your dream and your passion, is some dark times on your own, being away. I spent a large part of that time on my own, and sometimes I would actually go weeks without speaking English, except when I called my mum or something like that. So you'd...
and back then it wasn't Instagram or social media or video calls.
None of that. No YouTube. Used to go to a internet cafe every couple of days to do my emails. That was main communication. So, but again, very good for building your mental toughness that has served well throughout my life.
Yeah, I think that mental toughness that's developed through the hardest moments, like I always teach whenever I speak to anyone who's struggling in any way, I understand getting through this, like you need to search. A lot of people they try to avoid the difficult moments. And one of the things I always teach fighters is search for suffering. Like even at training, don't try to avoid the voices coming in your head that you're difficult. Search for those voices, search for this. Make it as difficult as possible for yourself. Because I think it's in those moments which also builds the confidence as you're facing these opponents that would have been way above your level at that stage.
Yeah.
Was it during the Sang Morakot days that you were flying around to Japan and the King's Cup?
Yeah.
Those times?
Yeah. So during the time that I was at Sang Morakot, I also spent a little bit of time in Japan. I had 7 fights in Japan. Spent about 5 or 6 months living there as well during that time. Had a few fights, got flown to Singapore for fights, fought in Hong Kong, even came back to fight on a couple of Pons shows back in the day. So yeah,
big
all
global
around,
scale at
but
that point.
was super busy. I remember I had 25 fights in the space of 2 years, 24 months at one point. So that was my busiest point.
So 25 fights during your time in Sang Morakot, Thailand, Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, even a few in Australia. It's undoubted that during that time, the skill set would have developed and the pure toughness of the sport would have also made you mentally tough. But also recall there was some real mental mindset inputs that you had at that time as well.
like during that time, I obviously discovered and learnt about my style, learnt to fight the Thai style for being a tall person, which was, lots of pressure, walk forward, clinch, knee, elbow, stuff like that. So I developed that, and obviously had that competitive nature and that hunger to win, especially round 3 and 4 fighting in Thailand. And I just did, because of the time, I did a lot of work on myself. So there obviously wasn't much in the way of sports psychologists and mind coaches and nutritionists and all that stuff around back then. So I read as many books as I could, and I read a really good book. I can't remember the name of it now, but it taught me the effect of the mind and coaching your mind. And it had a process of relaxation, a short meditation to bring you into a relaxed state so your mind is more willing to receive information, and then programming it with affirmations. So I had a number of short little paragraphs that were things that I wanted to program into myself. And so that I would do these every day, and it was just game changing. So learning to program myself, improve, believe in myself, like I was testing myself every day training, but just to believe in myself and what it did to my actual performances, my technique, your style and how I wanted to fight. It was just like programming it all in. It was just unbelievable. And it was during that time that I really made a lot of gains in myself. I think at one point there, from the time of the King's Cup to for a couple of years, I won 21 fights straight.
Wow.
After my record was not very good early on. I think at one point in my career, the starting part, I was 7 wins and 7 losses. And I was thinking to myself, fuck, maybe this sport's not for me. Maybe I should go back to triathlon or something like that.
Yeah.
And then I just went to Thailand and started finding myself.
Yep.
So, yeah.
It's incredible, the power of visualization. And unfortunately, Instagram nowadays, before the hippies have ruined it, because where we get it wrong is a lot of people think just affirmations, waking up and telling yourself you're worthy and amazing and all these things. There's a real process for affirmations to sink mentally, and you've done it perfectly, because meditation and breath work stills the mind, and the neuroscience is it switches off the prefrontal cortex. So the part of your brain that's overthinking and overanalyzing calms down. So what you tell your brain, what your brain sees in those moments, sinks a lot more.
Yep.
But then more importantly, you then went and backed it up with the evidence. See, the brain can believe something, but the evidence you apply to it is what buries it into your brain. And it's such a powerful point. Like, I remember when you told me this back in the day about the visualization, I used to even picture things like when my kick would land, I'd see fireworks cracking off, my arm getting raised at the end of the fight, that emotion that you feel with it. Because this sport, as physically as taxing as it is, mentally, it's what makes or breaks that top level fighter. During this stage as well was when you started transitioning into the belief of becoming a coach as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I knew, during this time, and I just loved Muay Thai so much, and just training and just it being my whole life. I knew that when I finished, it was what I wanted to do. I knew in myself, and it was during this time that I started taking notes and making notes and playing around with names and curriculum and how to structure things. And I've still got the notebook with all these things in it.
That's amazing. And this is where, again, when we talk to people like, I don't know what to do with my life. I don't know what to pursue. I don't know what my passion is. And a lot of the times, the stuff that you're building in the present day, as long as you're putting in the hard work and you're conscious throughout it, you'll look back one day and go, I can't believe this stemmed from that. And you've just got to keep building on it with an incredible amount of hard work, but the mindset and the belief system in yourself. So from Sang Morocco, Thailand, an incredible stint, coming back to Australia. At this stage, were you named Riddler yet? Was it Chevelle?
No, that was. Oh, hang on. No, I wasn't at this stage. So
Did you have a fight name in Thailand, or
No.
they just kept changing your name on the posters?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So moving back to Australia now, from my understanding through most of that time, Australia only at that stage, we had a handful of the OG guys fighting, Brett Dalton, Daniel Dawson. There were people coming up through ponds.
Yeah.
And then you had BJC as a dominant force.
Yeah. And Queensland was very strong at this point too.
Queensland was growing
because they were very into the Thai style early on as well. And
talk to me about your transition from Thailand back into the Australian scene.
Yep. My transition back was I obviously decided I felt like I was reaching a point where I needed to start thinking about afterwards, although I still felt like I had still plenty of time to go. I think I had another 20 fights in this time coming back from Thailand and being about 50 fights, and obviously I finished up being 73. So I had another 23 fights, and working on and being in my business, or like starting off doing it was obviously just doing some PTs and stuff like that out of one of my good mates' gyms. He had like a weights gym, conditioning gym. Used to do a lot of PTs, and I started holding pads for him, getting a few clients and things like that. And then I also did that out of my mate Brett Dalton's gym as well. Did some training there. Did some PTs. Trained my first fighter from that gym until I was doing a PT for one of my mates at his house in Leederville, and he was going to shift out soon, and he's like, "It's a pretty good size for a gym, you know." I'm like, "Yeah, it is." He goes, "Well, we're getting out soon." So anyway, long story short, that was just here in Leederville, and he shifted out and I shifted in, and that's where I started the gym. So
this was what year?
This was when I started Riddlers officially, 2003.
Yeah, because I think I came to you in 2004. And for the guys that don't know this history, it's incredible because back then the gyms were starting to build like Sean Allen's and stuff like that. And I remember at that stage I'd started training under Sean Allen's, and I was going to fight for Graham and them. And Bobby man goes, "Go check out Riddlers." And I remember driving up and down that street looking for a gym. And I called Bobby. I went, "Bobby, I don't see a fucking gym on this street." He goes, no, just pull up into the driveway. And I think at this stage, what I experienced here is what you would have experienced in Thailand. Because I've pulled up to the driveway and all I hear is, whack, crack, whack, crack. I was like, what the fuck is that noise? And I've gone inside, and I'll never forget this. I've seen Chris kicking pads and you holding pads for him in this little double port garage. And I was looking at that going, what are they doing? And he was like, "This is Muay Thai." I was like, what the fuck have I been learning so far? And I think you probably would have experienced this when you went to Thailand for the first time in Sang Morokai. And I remember sitting there and you asked me, and then afterwards you jumped on the cross trainer because you were still training up for, I believe, your retirement fight at that stage. You know, because like, what do you want to do? Do you want to do the gradings or do you want to fight? I was like, I want to fight. You go, okay, cool. And then, as again, history was made there because I think at that stage, if I remember correctly, it was you, Chris, Brad, and Will.
Yep. Yeah, Will.
And you had a beginner's class before it, which was like 8 to 10 people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was my first introduction to Thai style in Australia. Because I remember I'd come and run, and we'd run around Lake Munga, and that was the first time I'd run 6-7 kilometers, and then skipping. And you didn't have mats at that stage either.
Mats was still not invented.
It's still not invented. I remember the first time I skipped with Thai style skipping rope, and I held it incorrectly where the rope was in between my fingers, and I had blisters all the way through. And then I've still got my toe callus from kicking on that carpet.
Yeah.
Because I remember you had your retirement fight at that stage.
Yeah, 2005. July 2005.
What made you choose, like, what was the deciding factor for you to retire?
Two things. Physically, that were tied in. I physically felt like I was perhaps past my best. So I was 34. Still felt physically fast and strong and all that kind of stuff. But I felt like my focus was shifting to caring more about my fighters and their preparations than my own preparation. So, you know, when you're a professional fighter and you're just worrying about yourself, you don't have to worry about anyone else. So I just had a natural shift to caring more about my guys and their prep. And because I'd already started the gym 2003, my retirement fight wasn't until July 2005. I had a couple of years there where I was starting to build my guys. And I would often, you know, I was a new trainer. I would be on a show. I'd have 2 or 3 guys fight and then plus step into being one of the main fights myself and just feeling like I wasn't doing myself a justice or performing at the level that I should have been. So it was a mental shift and also a physical shift, perhaps realizing that you're past your best days. And so I decided it was just time.
Yeah, because I remember you were very much at peace at ending your career.
Never had itchy knuckles, thought about a comeback, not one time.
Yeah, because you've done, I think, and this is one of the important parts, you did everything you possibly could in that era in the sport.
Yep.
And one of the things we always see, unfortunately, is a lot of fighters continue for much longer than they should. And one of the things that we were going to discuss now, and I remember when I was speaking to you about building the fighter's mindset, I've gone, so many fighters leave this sport a worse version of themselves than they first started because they don't build on their mental mindset. They don't have goals. They don't reflect on their achievements. They don't have a what after. And they don't carry what they built from fighting into the rest of their life. So 36 years in the sport, 73 fights. Before we transition into the incredible 2 decades of Riddlers Gym, what have you taken away from this sport to create the version of the man you are today?
Number 1, discipline. Number 2, the importance of having direction, goal setting, knowing where you're going, what you want to do. But number 1, without a doubt, discipline. Discipline to get out of bed. Obviously, you know, pushing myself and learning to train when you don't feel like you can. All those kinds of things, making yourself do the extra work or train like Thai boys so that you are accepted. Back here, having the discipline to start and build up business while you're still training to fight. Even to this day and age, just getting out of bed when your alarm goes. You know, doing the work that's needed, working that little bit longer. You know, having a cold shower in the morning, getting in the ice bath every day, just little things like that.
Yeah.
So
it's incredible. I think discipline, again, another word that Instagram's raw, but discipline ultimately is the habits you repeatedly do that you don't want to do. I think that discipline that you build up into, I think it was Tyson that said it the best way. He goes, doing the things that you hate doing like you love doing them. And you have to show up, put so much of that work in. And I think discipline is a decision mentally that's produced physically. And for a lot of people, without the discipline of the mind, because the mind's the first thing that's going to make you want to quit. Once you've made that decision mentally, then the physical part is just showing up. Now, as we transition into the chapter of Riddlers Gym, it's 2 decades. Like I remember, and I think I've been such a part of it for so long that I feel like a part of the furniture. From one of the original fighters, original coaches, through all of the journey. And I think anyone that's been a part of Riddlers has always taken the Riddler style. And the gym's motto that Muay Thai is life is something that embodies so much of what everyone possibly here. However, if we want to talk about Riddlers Gym, I think we're going to be here for hours. So the main factor that I want to discuss that's so unique to yourself and your coach is there's a lot of fight coaches out there. There's a lot of coaches that get state titles, even national titles. However, you're one of the handful of coaches I've never known that's built back to back, year after year, decade after these years, WMC and WBC World Champions. And I think a lot of coaches and a lot of fighters can talk about what's required mentally and physically to reach the top 5, top 10 national. What have you found the defining factor on the global stage and to become a world champion?
Obviously physical ability, but above that, the champions that I can think of when I think of them, you know, their mind is what made them different. We always had my experience and the tactics and the game plans and, you know, the smart training, you know, a combination of the Thai style with a little bit more scientific stuff, doing, you know, adding in, you know, we added in some strength and conditioning years ago, you know, doing sprint work and Tabata and multiple kicks and all that kind of stuff, work rest kind of training rather than just long grindy Thai style.
Yeah.
You know, set the physical, but it's definitely the mental mindset of the ones that have become next level that is the standout when I think of people like, you know, Eugene Nickelboom, Kaylee Reece, Chris Tiger White, George Mann, all those kinds of guys. That they're a certain kind of mental state.
Yeah, and I suppose this is something I always ask. Can you build that mental toughness, build that mental resilience over time?
Yeah, you definitely can. You definitely can. You like there are some people that are just born with it, or have developed it from something else earlier on.
Yes.
You know, like Eugene Nickelboom always had it. Lloyd Nightmare Dean, he just used to grit his teeth and just go from the get go. He always had that ability and that grind, that resilience and grit, determination. From every pad round, every kick that he threw, every punch, every clinch was always like that. Some people, it's all they know. Others, you can build up and you can make them harder over time. And it's something that we're always trying to do. And it happens naturally. You know, even within the gym, you get people coming to your beginners classes, and obviously they're nowhere near as hard as your intermediates classes. And they find the beginners classes easy, and then they get to intermediates and they're like, oh, this is different, isn't it? And this is hard. And then they get used to that intermediate levels, and then they go into the fighters, or they might train for a D class fighter or something like that. And then that's another level again. And then they get into the fight team, and then there's the new fighters that are training for 3-2s, and then you've got the experienced pros that you push that little bit harder and do that a little bit more, have that higher level of expectation on them.
Yeah, I think even if I look back at all the guys that you've trained and all the people that have come through the ranks, mental discipline, resilience, that grit and that toughness is something that, yes, you can come with it naturally, and however, a whole different level of discipline and mindset needs to be trained into that person. However, the people that lasted in the sport, the ones that had longevity in the sport, the ones who went all the way through all the barriers was, I think, very much embodied in your own journey, where there would have been setbacks, difficulties, losses, fatigue, injuries, so many complications that came along the way. But consistently coming back day after day, loss after loss, setback after setback. Personally, I've always felt that's what builds the mental toughness. You know, we reach an age where we both got white whiskers in our beers, and looking back on my, it's just the style now. But looking back over these years, and for a lot of the younger generation fighters, people that might even be watching this who are struggling in life, throughout the most difficult moments is the most positive growth of the other side. There is not one traumatic, disastrous moment in my life that I can locate and think of that on the back of that, because I continue to show up, something amazing did work onto that as well. And I think this is what makes fighting so special. This is what makes our sport so incredible, that during the absolute most difficult moments, if you can keep showing up and grinding your teeth and walking forward, that resembles so much of life. And this is why I think for so many people, they love that mantra of Muay, that Muay Thai is life. There's so much more. Like, obviously Muay Thai is life because we fucking love Muay Thai. But what we learn in this sport, what we build in this, is such a powerful element. Finishing off, which is one of the most passionate parts of everything that I do, is raising the next generation. So not only have you been an experienced fighter, a successful business owner, amazing coach, now you're the father of two young breeds. How are you raising them?
I'm doing my best. I try to be involved with them as much as I can. I try to give them as many positive experiences as I can. I try to always make sure that I'm there, for training sessions at games and things like that. I try to teach them manners and right and wrong and all those kinds of things as parents try to do. So, but I certainly try to teach them a little bit of resilience, a little bit of, they call it rough house, play fighting and all that kind of thing. Always trying to test them out a little bit, make them feel a little bit uncomfortable, maybe get a little bit hurt, let them know that it's all right and that they can get through it and stuff like that. Yeah,
don't cottonwool them too much. It's such an important part because, choosing comfort for this space. And a lot of what of my conversations I have, I talk about fighters because I understand fighters, and I talk about men because I understand men. Like, I've had 2 divorces, I don't understand women, but I can speak on behalf of men. And I think the masculine energy, the men, need to understand that comfort and complacency is a killer. You have to consistently be doing difficult things. There's a certain level where happiness doesn't matter, joy doesn't matter, excitement doesn't matter as much as feeling proud. The only times you feel proud is when you truly do the difficult things. And for a lot of fighters watching there as well, when we talk about mindset, your brain's default is for survival. Survival means low risk. Your success is based at high risk. So you constantly have to look at these challenges. And I think this is why so many people get cooked in the sport of combat sports. It gives us something that I feel nothing in life does. Like, if you go back in a teleport machine and imagine your life down the path of triathlon, sure, you would have developed grit, confidence, potentially financial wealth, starting, fame. However, I truly believe fighting develops something so much deeper than us. There's no amount of running that will build up that same resilience as getting elbowed in the clinch. Like, knowing that's happening, I think builds such a powerful thing. As we close off, Daz, any message to the future fighters and the next generation when it comes to mindset?
Always work on your mind. Don't underestimate the value of the mind. Like I said to some of my fighters last night, the things that you experience in fights, the pre-fight nerves, the during fight nerves, the not being able to work a game plan, or the ability to take instruction and implement that game plan or that new advice, to be calm and cool enough to hear a call and then use it when the timing is right, being able to switch tactics, being hurt in a fight, getting yourself into the fight, coming back in the fight. That is all your mind.
Yeah,
that's all your mind and how you connect to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we were speaking about the world champion levels, the guys at that elite level, it's percentages differences in the physical, but the mental game is what builds it all. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's session. As anyone who knows Muay Thai, Australia or worldwide, the name Riddlers Gym embodies everything that our sport brings about. Today, you've heard all the experiences from Darren Riddler Reece himself regarding his journey, not only as a fighter, but as a coach and a father as well. The importance of the mind and how that's the differentiating factor between winners and world champions. Hope you guys enjoyed it.
Thanks, Mark.